In the last 48 hours, the war that appeared to be ending has lurched back toward its most dangerous edge. The United States seized an Iranian-flagged cargo vessel in the Gulf of Oman. Iran responded by reclosing the Strait of Hormuz. Trump threatened to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran if Iran does not accept his deal. Iran's state news agency rejected the second round of talks entirely. And then, while Islamabad was being placed under lockdown with 10,000 additional security forces and barbed wire around the Serena Hotel, the White House confirmed Vance, Witkoff, and Kushner are boarding a plane to Pakistan tonight. This is April 20th, 2026, day 52. The ceasefire expires in approximately 48 hours, and the board has never looked simultaneously closer to a deal and closer to catastrophe. Let us go through it in sequence, because the sequence matters enormously today. The ship seizure is where this week's escalation began. On Saturday, an Iranian-flagged cargo vessel attempted to cross the U.S. blockade line in the Gulf of Oman. According to U.S. Central Command, the ship ignored repeated warnings over a 6-hour period. American forces fired on the vessel, disabled it, and boarded it. U.S. Marines now have custody of the ship. CENTCOM said forces acted in a deliberate, professional, and proportional manner to ensure compliance. Iran's military headquarters called it a violation of the ceasefire and maritime piracy, saying Iran will respond soon. Iranian President Pezeshkian called Pakistan's Prime Minister Sharif to say the blockade itself is a violation of the ceasefire. And Iran followed through on Ghalibaf's warning from last week. The Strait of Hormuz was reclosed. No tankers passed through on Sunday, one of the quietest days in the channel since the war began February 28th. The brief window of movement that had opened on Friday, when 19 ships transited, was shut again within 48 hours. Trump's response on Truth Social was among the most extreme statements he has made since the war began.
We're offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. It's time for the Iran killing machine to end.
That threat, bombing civilian power plants and bridges, is a direct escalation of the infrastructure war that legal experts have repeatedly characterized as approaching war crimes territory. Trump has deployed it before as a pressure tool and pulled back. Whether this iteration is also a pressure tool or a genuine operational signal is the question every government in the region is asking right now. Now, the talk situation, because it is genuinely confusing, and the confusion itself is the story. On Sunday morning, Trump told ABC News that Vance would not be traveling to Islamabad for security reasons. Witkoff and Kushner would lead the delegation. Hours later, two senior administration officials told NBC News that Vance would, in fact, lead the delegation. The White House eventually confirmed all three, Vance, Witkoff, and Kushner, are heading to Islamabad Monday evening. Meanwhile, Iran's state news agency, IRNA, published a report saying Tehran was rejecting the second round of talks. It cited Washington's excessive demands, unrealistic expectations, constant shifts in stance, repeated contradictions, and the ongoing naval blockade. Iranian state media, without citing named officials, said the talks would not happen. And then, CNN sources said an Iranian delegation will in fact arrive in Pakistan on Tuesday. So, on the same day, Iran's official state news agency says talks are rejected, and CNN sources say a delegation is coming anyway. Both things appear to be simultaneously true. Iran is managing its domestic political optics. It cannot be seen publicly walking into talks under the threat of being bombed, while simultaneously preparing to sit down in the same hotel where they sat for 21 hours 8 days ago. This is not contradiction. This is negotiating theater. The same dynamic played out before the first round. Iran's ambassador in Islamabad deleted his post saying the delegation was arriving. Then they arrived. The public denial and the private preparation coexist because both audiences, the Iranian domestic public and the U.S. negotiating team, require different messages. What matters is that Islamabad is already on lockdown. Barbed wire is around the Serena Hotel. Pakistani security forces are deployed. The hotel has asked all guests to leave. Someone is expected to show up. The 48-hour countdown now defines everything. The ceasefire expires on Wednesday, April 22nd. The talks, if they happen, begin Monday evening with the U.S. delegation's arrival. That leaves roughly 36 to 48 hours of actual negotiating time before the legal framework of the pause expires. That is not enough time for a comprehensive nuclear deal. Everyone in every capital knows that. What 48 hours is potentially enough for? A ceasefire extension document, a framework agreement, a memorandum of principles that locks in the headline commitments and defers the details. And Arachi said they were inches from after Islamabad round one. Any of those outcomes stops the clock on the expiry without requiring the full moratorium question to be answered tonight. The specific arithmetic still unresolved. U.S. wants 20 years. Iran offered 5. The gap is 15. In 48 hours, negotiators would need to land somewhere in the middle. Call it 10 years, or 8, or a tiered structure where the first period is fixed and subsequent periods are conditional on verification. And both sides would need to politically survive that number at home. On the U.S. side, the political calculus is growing urgent. Gasoline is $4.13 per gallon. The midterms are 7 months away. Trump's approval rating has been declining. Republican senators are watching nervously. One Democratic senator, Maine's Jared Golden, a combat veteran, crossed the aisle to vote against a war powers measure, arguing it would weaken the U.S. negotiating position. That is how much political pressure the administration is under to show results. On the Iranian side, the seizure of a vessel under a nominally active ceasefire is a domestic political problem. The hardliners in the IRGC and the parliament see this as confirmation that America cannot be trusted. Galibov, who simultaneously leads the delegation and represents the hardline faction, has to return to Tehran with something that resembles Iranian dignity intact, not a document of capitulation. The Brent crude chart today tells you what the market thinks about the next 48 hours. Brent opened at $95 a barrel on Monday morning, up from the $91 to $92 range during most of the ceasefire, but still down from the $104 peak during the blockade announcement. Oil markets are pricing in a scenario that is worse than last week's cautious optimism, but better than a full resumption of bombing. The market is not pricing in a deal tonight. It is pricing in continued uncertainty with a tail risk of escalation. The economic data underneath that price continues to compound. Germany cut its 2026 growth forecast. The IMF's global projection is 3.1%. More than 20,000 seafarers remain trapped on vessels in the Gulf. The last pre-closure supertanker, which left the Gulf on February 28th, reached its destination on approximately April 20th, meaning the global supply chain is now running entirely on post-closure barrels rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope. Every day the strait remains closed is another day the world's energy architecture runs further from its design parameters. One more element of today's picture deserves direct attention. The Lebanon ceasefire is fraying. Over the weekend, a French UN peacekeeper, Florian Montorio, was killed in southern Lebanon. President Macron confirmed the death and attributed it to Hezbollah fire. Hezbollah denied responsibility. An Israeli soldier was also killed when his vehicle struck a bomb. Israel has established what it is calling a yellow line in southern Lebanon, a demarcation similar to the Gaza buffer zone, and has made clear it is not withdrawing its troops. The 10-day Lebanon ceasefire was the diplomatic unlock that was supposed to remove Iran's precondition for returning to talks. It is now under stress from multiple directions simultaneously. If the Lebanon ceasefire collapses before the Iran ceasefire expires, Iran has a fresh justification to walk away from Islamabad and from the broader diplomatic process entirely. Here is the honest picture on the morning of April 20th, 2026. A U.S. delegation is boarding a plane tonight for a second round of talks that Iran officially says will not happen, but privately appears to be preparing for. The ceasefire expires in approximately 48 hours. The Hormuz is reclosed. An Iranian ship has been seized. Trump has threatened to bomb every power plant and bridge in Iran. Oil is back toward $95. The Lebanon ceasefire is fraying, and Islamabad is under lockdown. The last time the board looked this chaotic was April 7th, the night Trump said a whole civilization will die tonight, which was also the night the ceasefire was announced. Chaos is sometimes the precondition for a deal, not the evidence against one. When every pressure vector is pointing toward resolution simultaneously, economic pain, military standoff, political deadline, domestic pressure on both sides, the calculus for both leaders shifts. The question for the next 48 hours is whether that shift is enough to produce a document, an extension, or at minimum a pause that prevents April 22nd from becoming the day the war resumed. Watch tonight, watch Tuesday, and come back tomorrow. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps more people find the board.